Okay, so I really like this Flex 2.0. I think it's a smashing piece of kit, and the upgrades they've made to the original version are all good. But there are a couple of tweaks I've had to make, and a couple of things I wanted to find out. So I thought what I would do is go through how I put this together and make reference to those things as we go. So let's get started then. So I already had these two cube tanks set up. The idea was a theme, a jungle tank on the left and a desert on the right. Truthfully though, I'm just not really feeling the desert one. However, I did want to use the rockscape from it because I thought that was pretty cool. Part of the problem was the barren foreground, which is kind of necessary because I had used an underground undergravel filter rather. So I decided I was going to break this tank down and replace it with the Flex. So once I had it in the right position with the leveling mat underneath, it was time to add the substrate, and I thought I would go with aquarium soil for this one, which is something I haven't done before, but wanted to try something new. I would have preferred Fluval stratum, but as I said before, my nearest decent fish store is, well, it's half a day there and back for the trip, and the Tropico was all the local store had, so we'll see how I get on with it. But just basically bunged it in and started leveling it out. Now what we tend to do is make it deeper at the back and shallower towards the front. It kind of gives a sense of depth, which I am doing, but the reason I'm doing this is because of those big rocks are going to be sitting in the back as well, and I want something to anchor them into. Now I'm not going to go into every feature of the new Fluval Flex 2.0 because I did that in my previous video, but I am going to point out anything additional that I've found since using it. Although I'll tell you one thing, it is so nice to have that lid propped up on the hinges and not worried about knocking it off. It just makes life so much easier. I'll not make you sit through the whole process of watching me put the rocks in, but basically I was just trying to create the kind of same look that I had before, getting the dragonstone in the same position pretty much, whilst also trying to leave a bit of a wider gap at the back for some stem plants, because I really want that kind of to look heavily planted behind the rocks eventually. A last check though, and a couple of wee tweaks, and it was time to add the accent stones. Now I find the best way of doing that is to just drop them in the tank and see where they land, and I'll tell you 9 times out of 10 that's the way you want to do it. It just tends to look more natural, I find. A couple of them ended up getting moved about a wee bit, but I think that's a pretty good start anyway. And then we can start adding our plants. So I'm going with Rotala rotundifolia in the background as my stem plant, thinking they should look really good when they kind of grow up behind the rocks there. And there's two ways of going about this. We can either place them into the soil when it's dry or add a bit of water. So I figured I'd try the dry method first, and it seemed to be working fine, so I'm going to carry on with this. If I found that I was going to struggle, I would have added some water, but it actually seemed to do the trick, and it meant if I wanted to move them about, I shouldn't make too much mess. For the foreground I went with this dwarf hairgrass, and after a quick rinse the idea is to break it up into as smaller pieces as you possibly can, and I would recommend that. I planted a couple of thicker patches, but what I found is they would come out of the soil once the water was added every now and then, so you'd end up breaking them apart and replanting them anyway, so you're better off doing that as early as possible from the start. That will help it to fill out quicker as well. It takes ages, it's a chore, but it's well worth getting it right. But with everything taking shape, I could start thinking about adding water now, but before that we need to think about our filtration. This aquarium kit is packed with it. There's loads of filtration going on in that back compartment, but we need to set some of it up. So I covered this in my last video, this centre section is modular and you can customise it however you want. So I'll not go back over that, but I need to set mine up. So I am going to go with some seasoned media in this bottom chamber. Going to steal some of that from another filter that I've got set up. That will almost instantly cycle this tank for the weak fish I'm going to keep in it. And in the second box, I'm going to put some more of that cycled media plus some filter floss, just to give a nice extra bit of polishing. Not that I think it's needed, if I'm honest with you, but it's not going to hurt either. 2 of the sponges then on top, and then we can slip it into position. A quick moment to add our heater. We can start filling this up, and it's relatively easy because we've got this back weir system. All we do is add our dechlorinated water into there. It doesn't disturb any of your scape that you've spent ages setting up. It's probably just me, but I found filling a tank like this strangely satisfying, watching the water gently rise up over the scape. But with the tank now full, this is where I ran into one of the tweaks I was mentioning earlier. When I turned the pump on, look how powerful that is. You can see the way it's chucking the debris about that's risen to the top of the surface. And for me, it's a wee bit overpowered. Considering it's likely to be smaller fish that you're keeping in an aquarium like this that could get blown about in heavy current, it's just a bit too much, I think. I mean, it might settle down a wee bit in time once you get some gunk in about the filter media, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough. So, I mean, look, even with it facing the back of the aquarium, it's still too much. So, I decided to come up with a remedy. And all I did was get myself some coarse filter foam. Roughly the same length as the spray bar. And a couple of cable ties just to hold it in place. The idea being to baffle a wee bit of the flow. Still provide as much current as you need, but certainly make it a lot more comfortable for the smaller fish. That's done the job nicely. I can still aim it to the surface to get some agitation there for the gas exchange. It's still turning over the water nicely. Still going to filter your tank. It's just not going to drive your fish crazy. I popped in a couple of white clouds just to test it out, and they seemed comfortable enough, so we're happy with that job. Something I noticed was the channels at the back in the lid designed for the water to run down back into the tank do work. They work quite nicely, in fact, but you got to open the lid quite slowly. If you rush it and open it too quick, water does still spill down the back. Another thing I was interested in was how good the light is, and it seems to be growing the plants more than adequately. But I've got some of this Rotala Blood Red in this other tank, and I thought I'd stick some in the Flex to see how that gets on, if it can keep it red. No CO2, by the way, just a good light. And as you can see, it's doing a fine job. The green parts you can see is new growth, but even on the very top of the new growth, it is starting to turn red again. So I think the light is pretty, well, better than I thought it was actually. Lastly, in terms of tweaks, a couple of people have said to me, despite the intakes being smaller slits, could baby shrimp and fry still slip back into the filter section? And yeah, they could. One way you could deal with that is to use the sponges that come with the kit. You could slide them down into this first section rather than putting them on top of the media baskets in slot number 2. That would prevent smaller fish and shrimp getting through there. If you're not happy to do that though, you could buy some additional filter foam. I've got this stuff that's designed for ponds here. There's 3 different sizes in terms of how coarse or fine they are. Cut a piece of size though for the thickness that you choose, and that'll do the same job. There we go, a couple of issues maybe, but some answers to them. Still think it's one of the best aquariums on the market. Certainly one of the best all-in-one kits. Still think it's one of the most beautiful looking aquariums. Not just the styling, the shape of it, but also that honeycomb strip at the top that helps to hide the water level, and in fact hides the spray bar from view. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. I like the wee caves I've got there. There's 2 or 3. Makes it look kind of cool and gives the fish somewhere safe to hang out should they need it. Yeah, repeat everything I said in my last video. All the upgrades that they've made to the Flex, I think have been good ones and work well. As you can see, I've got some pretty special fish to go into a special aquarium like this, which I'm going to be learning more about, and I'm sure you'll see them again in the future. But yeah, the Fluval Flex 2.0 for me is a win. If you have any other questions or whatever about it, I will try and help if I can, but otherwise, I'm out. Later.